All right, guys, this is the PuckiPuppy Labrador Pro. Now, Pro being the beefier, more powerful version of their Labrador series fat tire e-bike. And this one has peaking power at up to 1,350 watts, and it pumps out 120 Newton meters of torque. Now, it's also full suspension and promises up to 80 miles of range. So, let's do a deep dive on the Labrador Pro here and see if it lives up to its all-terrain claims. All right, guys, let's go over the basics on the PuckiPuppy Labrador Pro. Now, this is a Class 3 e-bike, so you have throttle speed up to 20 miles an hour and pedal assist up to 28 miles an hour. Now, it's priced at $15.99, so pretty reasonably priced in today's 2025 market with tariffs and everything. And this is not quite UL certified. I say quite because they're currently in process with the UL certification, but that does take some time. But it's good to know that they've got this set up to meet those compliance safety terms already. They just haven't finished all of the paperwork or certification process. Now, in terms of weight, they say this bike weighs around upper 84 pounds, just under 85 pounds. I threw this one up on the scale when I got it, and I got it about 82 pounds, so a little bit less than they say, which doesn't happen often, but that's good, but still roughly an 80-pound e-bike. Now, in terms of colors and frame sizes, this comes in one frame size that fits riders from 5'4" all the way to 6'6". And I'm at 5'11", so I'm kind of in the middle of that, and I felt like it fit me just fine. However, at 6'6", I have no idea how well that'll fit, nor at 5'4". But if you're in that general upper 5 feet, low 6 feet, like most folks are, I think this is going to be a good fit for most people. In terms of colors, this is the orange color they offer, but they also offer some other ones. Now, the orange color has this gray accented rear triangle, but if you don't like that, the other colors are all solid one color. Now, those colors are like a gray metallic, which has a nice metallic finish to it. Now, there's also what they call plating gray, so two grays, but this plating gray looks more like a copper brown or like a clay brown. So not quite gray, although that's what's used in the name. And then the other color you can get is camo. Now, the camo color is full camo, but it's an extra $100. But if you're someone who uses your fat tire bikes for hunting and things like that, that might be worth it to you. It's an extra $100. It's kind of a cool new camo look that I haven't seen too many times before. That looks pretty nice as well. Now, some geo numbers for this frame are, we have about a 47-inch wheelbase from rear hub to front hub or vice versa. The lowest point to step over or stand over here is going to be 28.6 inches. We've got about 8 inches of adjustability here in the seat post. And then up top, we have a reach of 23 inches. Now, if you pay attention to reach numbers on bikes, you can probably already throw up a flag in your mind. Reach at 23 inches is pretty long for a bike. And you'll see when we go on a ride, I'll talk about how that equates to rider position and how that feels. But just keep in mind, there is an extended reach on here out at 23 inches, so you will be kind of out front, leaning forward, almost like you're on a mountain bike type of position. Now, the max payload, as far as how much it can carry total, is 400 pounds. Of course, we have fat tires, so 26-inch double alloy walled wheels with offset spokes, and then wrapped in a 26 by 4 inch wide tire. Now, these tires are like an all-terrain tire. They have some knobbies on them that you'll definitely hear when you're riding on pavement, which you'll hear when we go out on the road here for a test ride. But ideally, these are really going to be good off-road. You can go off-road, you can ride in gravel, dirt, a little bit of mud, loose stuff. It's going to be good off-road, and it does good on pavement. You'll just hear those tires on pavement. Now, the beauty of 4-inch wide tires is not only the extra grip, traction, all the things that come with them, and the ability to roll over rocks and things like that, but you can also air these down to as low as like 5 to 7 pounds, or PSI. Now, going that low is going to give you enough to kind of ride around the bike and still have traction, just like when a Jeep airs down its tires when it goes four-wheeling. That's the same concept here, but it also adds to the comfort because you start getting some squish in the tires that kind of chew up those road vibrations as you ride the bike. Now, in terms of accessories, so it has a rear rack and fenders that are optional purchases at the time of purchase, so it doesn't come standard with a rear rack or fenders. This one I was sent for testing did come with the rear rack. It's got a nice, hefty build quality to it, lots of mounting points, nice and secure. And then there are accessory packages to add things like rear racks and fenders. I think they're really reasonable, right around $59 to $99. You get not only the fenders, the rear rack, but also some other accessories like phone mounts or bike locks, things like that. There's a nice accessory package for around $99, so they're not really going crazy with the accessory prices. So if you wanted to tack those on, it's a pretty solid deal. In addition to that, their accessories offer their replacement batteries for just $99, which with a massive 960 watt hour battery, that's a really solid second addition to add, because batteries are something that can go over time if they're not charged correctly, or once they reach their charge life cycle, batteries go bad, and then you're stuck with this big bike that you can't really repower. However, picking up a spare battery with most brands can be upwards of $300, $400. This one is just $99 for a spare battery, so that's another strong point in my opinion too. Now, in terms of included accessories, now this will come with an air pump that you can pump up the tires with, and it comes with a small toolkit so you can do roadside repairs or your own maintenance if you need to. Everything you're going to need to kind of assemble and disassemble the bike comes in that little toolkit. And then, of course, the 2 amp charger for the battery. Now, as far as lighting, we have a front LED adjustable angle headlight and a rear rack-mounted taillight that when you activate the brakes also has a brake feature, so it'll get brighter when you hit the brakes just like your car does. Other than that, when it comes to like mounting a water bottle cage, as you can see, there's no mounting points on the frame here. At first I thought, oh, that's a miss by the brand. They should have just put some water bottle cages on there. But then I got to looking at the frame, and I'm not sure where you'd put them. If you put them here, you're going to make that standover height a lot taller. You're probably going to nick it all the time with your foot when you put it over. You might be able to fit one in here, but it looks like probably not. And then on the front side here, you have the battery cover where you drop the battery. So there's really not many places, so I can't really ding them on that. It's because of the larger battery and the full suspension design. There's just not a lot of room for water bottle cages, so something to keep in mind. All right, so let's talk about the power on the Labrador Pro, because that's what makes this bike the Pro. This has the beefier motor with beefier peaking power. Now, this is a 750 watt rear hub motor. Now, it peaks at 1,350 watts, so almost double its nominal power, and then it pumps out up to 120 newton meters of torque, which is really powerful, and you can really feel that on hill climbs or when you're riding off-road, and you need that extra low-end torque to be able to get over small bumps, up steep hills, without the motor feeling like it's struggling, and it does a really good job with that. Now, this is activated by a torque sensor. Now, this torque sensor, all torque sensors have different programming, and some by design are more reserved, some by design are more sensitive. This one's an interesting mix. So on the low end, when you pedal softly, it's a very soft pedal assistance, but it's there and it's enough to keep the bike moving. You're moving 10, 11 miles an hour, not super fast, but it's a very steady power delivery. Now, when you push a little bit harder, you don't see a whole lot of change. It's not very even on its rise, but when you progressively and intentionally pedal much harder, you get a big boost, and that's when you really start feeling the power of this motor kick in. So it's kind of got a two-tier torque sensor system. It's very mild and reserved on the low end, and then quickly kind of just ramps up to a higher end. So not a lot of mid-ground there, but it does effectively manage that, and it really helped in the range results, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now, this is throttle capped at 20 miles an hour, max speed 28 miles an hour, torque sensor and pedal assist levels 1 through 5. So no surprises there, pretty standard setup for an e-bike. Now, the battery is fully integrated into the frame here, as you can see, and it's a 48 volt battery, 20 amp hours, giving us 960 watt hours of power, which is pretty beefy as well. Now, it can be locked onto the bike or taken off for off the bike charging, and I'll show you how that works now. Now, the bike does come with a set of keys. I'll show you how this comes out here. You just pop in the key on the left side, and you'll see this drop down here. There's another latch that fully releases it. And then on one end, we have this kind of external battery meter. You can just touch it and it'll let you know what the charge is at a quick glance. And again, this is 10.7 pounds, so a little over 10 pounds, 960 watt hours. Now, in terms of range, they estimate you can get between 40 and 80 miles. So of course, I did 2 range tests on this. One in minimum assistance on that really low end, and then one on maximum assistance, PAS5, going basically full blast. Now, on the minimum assistance with the lowest level of effort, just kind of really idle speeds, relaxed ride, I got 78 miles, so right up against that 80 mile limit that they advertise. And then when I recharged and did the second run at max speed, this time I got 49 miles. So going 49, basically 50 miles at full bore is really solid numbers for a bike this big, this heavy. And a lot of that just comes down to torque sensor programming, battery management, things like that. But at the end of the day, it really did meet that essentially 40 to 80 mile estimate that they advertise, which I'm always happy to report because it's not fun when you can't get anywhere near what brands estimate. Now, on top of that, this comes with a 2-year warranty. The bike is a 2-year warranty, but they offer something kind of cool. You can add 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year extensions. They use a third party for it, but it's pretty reasonably priced. You could get a warranty out to 5 years on this for around an extra $200. And for some people, that may be a really solid peace of mind. Now, to put this battery back, I'm going to just put the bottom in first, and then it top slides in and clicks in place, and you're ready to go. It self-locks just like that. All right, so let's talk about the components on the Labrador Pro. So I'll start back here in the drivetrain. It's an 8-speed drivetrain, which is worth mentioning that if you go for the Labrador Standard Series, not only does that one have a slightly less powerful motor, but that one will have a 7-speed lower tier Shimano drivetrain. So this one, being the Pro version, has the 8-speed Shimano Altus, about a tier higher than the Tourney. And this one is a 12 to 32 cassette in the rear, 8-speed derailleur with a 46-tooth chainring up front and a chain guard, or kind of a rub guard on that front chainring. Now, the cranks are 170mm alloy cranks, and you do get included flat plastic pedals that do have some traction studs and reflections for visibility when you're riding at night. Now, the brakes on here are Logan hydraulic disc brakes. We don't see them as often as something like Tektro, but we do see them enough to feel like we've seen their name enough that we're starting to trust Logan as a brand, and we didn't have any issues with these brakes. Now, the setup is a 2-piston caliper on 180mm rotors that are 1.8 millimeters thick. Now, I should throw out an interesting caveat here. The website, when you look at it, says that the rotors are 3mm by 180, which I don't know of any rotors that are 3mm thick, so I believe that's a typo. Just know that the one I got, and maybe the one you got, or you get, will be 1.8 millimeters as well. Or maybe the typo was they're gonna go to a 2.3 millimeter, a slightly thicker rotor. I'm just not sure, so I want to put that out there. If you see 3mm by 180 on the website, just know that in my experience, I was sent 1.8 millimeter thick rotors. Don't want to go too far into the weeds on that, just a small clarification that I saw on the website versus what I actually got in person. Now, when it comes to the saddle up here, this saddle is super wide and super thick, as you can see. It's got an undersided spring support and carry handle if you want to lift it, and you can adjust it with about 8 inches of adjustability through the quick release lever here, and then lock it back in place based on the height that you want. Now, moving up front here, we have a front suspension fork. Now, as you can see, it's a little stiffer than most, and what happens when you're riding is that means that on the small paved road imperfections, little like roots or whatever that are coming up through sidewalk cracks, things like that, road imperfections, you don't get a lot of feedback from this fork in those situations. But when you go over like big curbs, or you drop off something, or you go off-roading, you do really start to see that fork doing its job. It's just not going to be felt as much when you're doing daily city rides on pavement. But in the back, we have a full suspension, or rear shock. Now, this one has about 35 millimeters of actuation. It is branded PuckiPuppy, so it's their own in-house shock. But you feel this one a lot more, and as you can see, when I put a little pressure on it, it starts to actuate. This one I felt all the time. So if I'm riding on pavement, I would feel little imperfections. I'd feel the seat go down a little bit from this rear shock doing its job. So this one goes a long way. It almost feels like a suspension seat post, but it's a more quality version because it's doing the frame linkage, allowing that frame to actually flex while you go over bumps and things like that. Back up front here, the front suspension fork is 130 millimeters of travel. It's a coil spring and a bolted axle, but you do have a lockout feature should you want to lock it out, and a preload adjustment. Now, moving up top, we have all of the cables coming off of the dash here, or the cockpit. And because we have things like cutoff sensors for the motor, brake light sensors, we have some extra cables on this one. They all eventually get tied up into one larger cable route, and that goes into the frame to their final destination. Now, in terms of the handlebar, this is a 720 millimeter bar wide with ergonomic platform lock-on grips that feel pretty good. They're rubber. You have your Logan brake levers on both sides, and a throttle on the left with your display control buttons. And then on the right, you have your 8-speed trigger shifter with a window so you can see what gear you're in. Now, as far as the stem goes, this is a pretty standard, like stubby 31.8 millimeter fixed stem, so you can't adjust it. But if you remember in the overview, I talked about having a long reach on this bike. It's kind of, that 23 inches is kind of long. I'd like to see a adjustable stem here, so maybe you could bring that up and shorten it, make the ride a little bit more upright and relaxed if you want to, or slam it forward. But nonetheless, right now, that's an easy fix, or you could always swap out the handlebar if you thought the reach was too long to something with a higher rise, and that might only cost you 30 bucks or so, and that would bring those hands up more if you want a more relaxed ride. Now, in terms of the display, let's take a closer look at the PuckiPuppy display and what features it has in it. All right, so this is the display on the PuckiPuppy Labrador Pro. Now, one quick caveat before I jump into all the features of this. The website currently says that they have a detachable faceplate for the display with a quick release down below. This one does not have it, so I don't know if that's maybe on a new, the model's going out as of today. Just know that you may be getting that if you order it. However, this one I was sent for testing did not have that. I just want to put that out there. Now, as far as the basics of the screen, right here in the center on the left, we have the current speed, which is 0 because the bike's not moving. This meter scale right here, 0 to 6, is the battery indicator. And then the pedal assist levels as you go up. Not only does the number change on the screen, but you'll see that little bar on the right side kind of indicate at the same time where it's at pedal assistance wise. Now, if you want to go into some advanced settings, you can do it a couple of ways. There's two different settings menu. One is technical settings, one is function settings. We'll go into function first, some basics in there. We'll hold the up and down pedal assist buttons, and that will take us to it. And so now we're in the function settings. Here you could go into screen brightness on a scale of 1 to 3. You can go down and change units of measurements from kilometers per hour to miles per hour. You can go in startup mode, either safe mode or free mode. Or you can reset the trip meter. Since we don't need to do any of that, I'll back out and show you the technical settings where there's some extra ones. And to get to that, you're going to hold all three buttons. So up, PAS, down PAS, and the headlight button. So we'll hold all three at once. And that will take us to the technical settings. Now here you can adjust the speed limit for that throttle. Right now I said the throttle is capped at 20 miles an hour. But if you wanted to go in there, you could always increase that to say 28 and set that there. Now, if you want to go down and change the levels of pedal assist from, it's currently 5 levels, so 1 through 5, you could make that 1 through 3 in here. So you get to choose basically between 3 levels of assistance or 5 levels. Here is the voltage level, which I never mess with things like that unless support's telling me to do it because I don't want to change any voltage levels on a bike. Wheel diameter, say you got a different size wheel, you could change it in here. Magnets for the sensor, you could adjust those here, but I don't really mess with those if things are working correctly. Riding modes, we'll take a look at this one. This one is going to let you have a choice between using only the motor or using only the pedal assistance, or like a true e-bike, the setting it's in now, both motor and pedal assistance. So we'll back out of that. Go down to intensity settings. This is my favorite feature. This brand, PuckiPuppy, and then Machwheel also does this, but essentially the intensity settings, you can go into here and you can choose 1 through 5. Now the bike ships at level 3. What intensity settings are is they're like an overall profile of your pedal assistance. So you'll still have 5 levels of pedal assistance, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the most aggressive. But this overall setting here, the intensity setting, will basically dictate how aggressive each of these is. So basically, you could go to intensity setting 5, I'll jump back in there, and that one will be as punchy as the bike can be. It'll be really quick off the start, really quick acceleration through all 5 levels of pedal assistance. Or you can go to level 1, and you can, you can go to level 5, crank everything up, or you can go to level 1, dial everything back. Say you just got the bike and you're a little concerned about the power and the speed, or just want to learn to handle it better before you start messing with aggressive speed, then this is a good time to use level intensity 1. Now it'll ship at level 3 right in the middle of the road, but you can dictate what you do, or maybe your kid wants to ride, or a family member who's not proficient with e-bikes yet. That's a good time to play with those settings and make sure it's dialed back on a more low profile. And then the other option here is a factory reset. Should you want to factory reset everything, that is where you could do that. And so we'll just back out of here and we're back to the home screen. So as you can see, a really simple display, but it's got everything you need in it, and you can do all the motor tweaking on the back end like I just showed you, as well as things like units and time and factory resets. So everything you need here in the display, and there's no companion app for this, so you don't need to pair this to your bike. At the end of the day, this is the screen setup, and it has everything I needed, and it's pretty solid. I like the full color. The size is nice. You can see all the numbers really well, and even in direct sunlight, this display looks really nice. All right, we're out here on the PuckiPuppy Labrador Pro. Now, normally when I get on these, first things I'll touch on is just how the bike fit, the feel, the riding position, what kind of body position you're in when you're riding it. And if it's not obvious on camera, because we have this flat bar here with a fixed stem, so it's not an adjustable stem, you can't lift it up. So that means your body position is going to be similar to that of like riding any kind of like mountain bike, to where you're leaning in to the handlebars. You can feel the weight a little bit on your hands and your palms, which is nice that they have these kind of ergonomic rubber platform grips. But if you're someone who wants the more relaxed ride with that handlebar higher up, it's where you can kind of sit up more and just be a little bit more relaxed and have a higher handlebar height, or higher stack height, I think is the official term. You'll either need to add an adjustable stem that you can raise up, or just get a handlebar that has more rise in it, and that'll bring those grips up a little bit to make the ride more relaxed. But the way it ships, it's a fairly standard like mountain bike feel, just as far as leaning into the flat bar with your weight on your palms of your hands. Now the seat is very comfortable. It's super wide, super cushy, as you can expect. Not the most pedal friendly, but not bad. You will feel it a little bit in your hamstring area. But that's a trade-off for having a super wide, comfy saddle. If you don't like that, you want to pedal more, you don't like that aspect of it, you can always put a more narrow saddle on. But for those of you who like comfort, the comfort factor is definitely present. Now, you may hear it, but the only noise this bike is making comes from the tires. So the tires are big, 26 inches, 4 inches wide. So real beefy tire, and it's got an all-terrain tread pattern. So those all-terrain knobbies on the rubber, like on pavement, when a lifted truck goes by, you can hear those tires kind of howling a little bit. It's not super loud, but it's also not a silent ride at all. You can definitely hear the tires. So I'm currently riding in PAS 3, and this has a really beefy motor, 750 watts, peaks at 1350. It has 120 newton meters of torque. I'm just going to hold this throttle. We're going to go up this little hill here. So the throttle's self-corrected right at 20. And kind of just backs off, hits 20, backs off, hits 20, backs off. And you can kind of hear that motor doing it too. We lost about 1.8 miles an hour. Going up that, and that's 9%. Now it's a short, punchy 9%. I mean, you saw how quick that was. So let's go into the neighborhood here. We'll go up this road, and it's got more of like a 5 to 7% grade, which is a pretty standard, just incline. Not crazy steep, but pretty typical of what you see in most areas. And this one's a lot longer. It's like a quarter mile, so we'll be able to hold that throttle and just see how it does going up the hill. I have a suspicion it's not going to have any problems, but let's just see how it does. So I'm just going to hold this throttle. We're in PAS 5. And as you can probably hear, we're just accelerating straight up the hill. The motor's really quiet. Now when I'm asking for all of its power like I am right now, you can hear it wind up, but that's typical of any e-bike motor. When you're riding and just keeping like a steady pace, the motor's very quiet. So this is having no trouble just staying pegged at 20 miles an hour going up the hill. So I'm gonna throw in pedal assist to 28 and see how that does going up a hill. So I'm gonna do that now. Shift up my gears, and we're accelerating. And I'm not pushing very hard. I'm doing a very just kind of natural pedaling pace. We're up at like 24 miles an hour. Now if I push harder, a little faster, we're now at 26 on the display, 27, 28 maxed out. And you can hear my breath. I'm not out of breath. I didn't work myself up doing that. But if you give it a little bit extra pressure in those pedals with this torque sensor, you can easily get up to speed, even going uphill. Plenty of power for sure. I'm gonna turn into this next neighborhood so I can turn around. When we go back down the hill, we'll play with the brakes a little bit, see how they do. But I've been riding a lot. The brakes are fine. They do their job. But we'll get it up to speed and see how it does. All right, let's get back up over the hump of this hill. And then on the way down, as we're up over 20 miles an hour, try to do some quick stops and see how the bike does. As you can see, it gets up to speed real easy on PAS5. I'm already at 25 miles an hour. In fact, let's go ahead and hit it now. 3, 2, 1. So nice braking. I did feel a tiny bit of lockup at the rear tire right at the very end, but a lot of that has to do with how hard I'm squeezing the brakes in the moment. Let's get back up to speed again, do it again. All right, so we're at 24, 3, 2, 1. So good braking, no issues there. Definitely, you know, a 2-piston caliper. It's pretty standard for what we see. Anybody who watches the channel knows at this point, I'd always prefer on a fat tire bike 4 pistons, but these perform as they should. The stopping is safe. Yeah, so like I said, it's a standard hydraulic disc brake setup, 2-piston calipers, 180 millimeter rotors, and they do just fine, which is, again, it's pretty standard for e-bikes these days, many fat tires included, so it's not a knock on them. It's more of a personal wish to see a 4-piston caliper setup. It would just give you beefier braking. So the suspension on here, you can feel the rear air shock, the rear shock quite a bit. You can feel it going over bumps. It almost feels like a suspension seat post as far as like how it's felt in the ride. But we don't have a suspension seat post, so I know it's not that. You can actually just stand up and look down and you can see the rear shock constantly actuating. So it's always doing its job. Now the front one's a little stiffer. It doesn't go as often when I'm riding around town like this. I can feel the rear shock moving more, which ultimately keeps it comfy because I have this wide seat and then my saddle's always compressing from the rear shock. But it's not bottoming out. It's just kind of constantly giving you that feedback. The front fork, it just feels a little bit stiffer there to get it to do anything when you're doing basic rides like this. But when you go off-road, when you come off, or you say you come off a curb with some speed, that drop, that's when the fork definitely does its job. So it's just, the spring rate on it is just a little bit more leaning a little bit more towards like aggressive use. I didn't feel a ton of it when I was riding around towns and cities on smooth roads, but every time I dropped off something or hit something kind of hard, I would see and feel the front fork, you know, do its job. But as you can see, it's got no issue staying up to speed, getting up to speed, power, and very comfortable. But let's go back and put it up on a mechanic stand and talk about it from an ownership standpoint. Maybe some things you're not considering, and you might just find out once you get the bike to your house. So let's do that now. All right, guys, so let's take a look at this up on a mechanic stand. This is where I kind of talk less about it from a review standpoint, about all the things that are features and specs. And I kind of try to look at it more objectively and point out things that you may not see at home, that if you're looking at the product page on the website, there's all that fancy marketing like all the companies do. But sometimes there's things that once you get it home, you open the box, you start using it, you're like, oh, I wish I'd have known this about it. I don't really love this part about it. Those are the things I like to point out here that just kind of help you make a better decision. So I'll start with some things that I like. Oh, and just a quick nod to Feedback Sports. They did not sponsor this or ask me to do this. We use it on all their e-bike reviews, but even an 85-pound bike like this, or 82 pounds, which mine weighed, it can hold it up pretty well. I wouldn't put a bike like this on a standard like $50 bike stand from Amazon unless you just want to watch it fall to the ground. This one's nice and durable. Just does a good job. There'll be a link down below. Again, they didn't sponsor this, just something I like to point out. Now, as far as the stuff that's good, that I think are worth mentioning, so all the components, we have Shimano drivetrain front to back. We have 170 millimeter alloy cranks. We have the Logan hydraulic disc brakes. everything on here component-wise that will need to be maintained or serviced over the life of the bike are all things your local bike shop are going to be familiar with. There's no really unique companies or obscure brands that they won't be able to find parts for to service your bike, which is always a good thing. Sometimes you get something that I think the companies want to save some money, so they go with a really obscure or really unique part. And while that might save them some cash, it just makes your life a little bit more miserable when you need to service that or replace that part. So everything on here is name brand, and your local bike shop can tackle it, which is nice for any scenario. Or if you do your own maintenance, it's something you can find replacement parts for yourself. Now, also I like on the saddle. So usually on bikes we get up and down adjustments, so you can raise and lower the saddle height. Now on more performance and premium bikes, they all have micro adjustments here in the saddle rails, but not all of them on the direct-to-consumer e-bike side always have that. And it's nice to be able to adjust that seat position forward or backward, especially on a bike with a long reach like that. That's going to let you fit in a better body position for your reach, and just what's more comfortable for you. That's where something like that really starts to shine. Now, on far as things that I would just say I'd want to improve on a bike like this bike has a nice glossy finish on the chainstay. However, there's no paint protection or film over that chainstay. So as that chain starts to slap, especially on an off-road bike with no clutch on the derailleur, you can see it already. That's going to start to slap that chainstay. And as time progresses and you do more activities on the bike, that's going to start to chew away at that gloss finish and ultimately into the paint, into the raw metal underneath it, or the aluminum underneath it. So that is something that you can get for a couple bucks on Amazon, a protective film piece, or you can get a beefy rubber one that will stick on, and they will all do a great job for a few bucks of protecting that chainstay. Something to know before you make a purchase. On that note, the only other thing I want to point out is the rear shock. Now, did I like the performance of the rear shock? I did. I always felt it doing its job. It gave me nice suspension protection when I was riding the bike. No complaints about the performance. However, this housing body here is plastic, and I've never seen a rear shock with a plastic housing body, and I think over time, while the internals are strictly a coil spring, a metal spring, so I'm not worried about that, I'm more worried about the body itself. As time progresses, as sun beats down on it, it gets weathered, that plastic may become brittle, and if it breaks, I don't think you're going to find a local bike shop that can get access to the PuckiPuppy rear shock housing body, if you catch my drift. So you're probably going to have to hope that PuckiPuppy has that down the road to replace, or you can find some other alternative, but that's something just to keep in mind, because I do feel like the plastic housing at some point will probably go, especially for a bike that's built to go off-road and be treated kind of rough. All in all, those were the only few things I wanted to point out that I thought were worth mentioning. Been a pretty solid bike. I've enjoyed my time with it, and hopefully that helps you guys make a better decision. All right, guys, so there you have it, the Labrador Pro by PuckiPuppy. Now, this is a pretty fun fat tire all-terrain bike with full suspension, and I got really good range numbers, up to 80 miles of range that I was actually able to see in real-life testing, which we don't always get, and that's pretty cool. Now, aside from that, is it perfect? No e-bike is. This one, I didn't love the plastic housing on the rear shock. I don't know how long that will last. The good news is I'm pretty sure that's a coil inside, so I don't think the coil will ever give you problems, but that plastic housing body may over time. And then aside from that, maybe the reach up top, having an adjustable stem would be nice, just to be able to bring that reach back for people with a shorter torso or shorter arms to make it more comfortable for them. But all in all, it was pretty well done, and I enjoyed my time with it. Now, if I missed anything that you'd like to know about it, drop me a comment down below, and I will source that information for you and get back to you personally, so you have that so you can make an informed decision. Until the next review comes out, guys, I'll see you out on the trail.